It's Eric from Real Chiropractic Dynamics, and I'm here on a Sunday night in Barcelona, and we're gonna have a good chat here with Dr. Jenna. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm slightly hungover. Last night I had some cans, but I'm gonna hype myself up for an hour, and I like talking to chiropractors, so that's gonna give me some energy. And this is.
So we should be having some Bloody Marys right now and helping you recoup then with your hangover.
Yes, that'll be part of my cocktails and chiropractic segment that I'm going to start doing.
I want to come back for that.
You're another chiropractor that I found on Instagram just from going under hashtag Gonstead. Now, I am not a gondroid, but I dabble a little bit. I literally just started a few months ago. And I kind of thought it would be from going from diversified to starting to play with the Gonstead stuff. I thought it would be like same but different. So I thought maybe if you went from like CrossFit to powerlifting, you know, like different things, but the same sort of thing. This is more like going from CrossFit to I'm going to go up into the mountains and fight bears to keep fit. Like it's a completely different world. So I really enjoy talking.
I think I'm gonna put that on my business card. It's gonna be like Dr. Jenna Kuiken, bear fighter.
Yeah. That's what it's like. It's a completely different world, but I really love it. It's fascinating. So I like talking to you guys. But you've had a very interesting journey to get to where you are, and you're doing only Gonstead. You're a Gondroid, yeah.
Yes, yep, I am doing Gonstead only. While I was in school, I did check out other techniques just because I didn't want to kind of short myself or kind of stunt my growth in chiropractic. I just wanted to see what else was out there because especially those first few months in chiropractic school, I feel like a lot of teachers kind of downplayed us females or our female chiropractic students and were like, oh, you might want to do this or this technique because it'd be better for your small body type. And I was like, no. So I definitely looked into diversified, motion palpation, NUCA, but I just kept coming back to Gonstead. And I think primarily because I was raised with a father that practices Gonstead technique.
Yeah. So do you want to talk a little bit about that, like your upbringing, or so you're second generation, and your dad he was doing only Gonstead as well?
Yep. So I was adopted by my parents and my two older brothers when I was about 7 months old. Came from South Korea over to the United States and grew up in northern Minnesota. And so from 7 months on, I have been adjusted by my father. We also have a close family friend that's literally kitty corner across the street. He practices Gonstead too. So I have just been fully submerged in it from day one practically. And it's just second nature at this point. It was actually kind of hard going to school at Northwestern because they focus on diversified. And here I had grown up listening to all the listings, all the talk in Gonstead, language. And then I had to kind of get rid of that and learn how to start adjusting and learn the listings of diversified again.
Would you advise people to do that? So like the people that really want to get into Gonstead, because in my opinion, it's one of the harder techniques to learn, if not the hardest technique to learn. So maybe it's good to have that base to work on before you then go into the Gonstead. So even though you had in your mind, you had in your consciousness, like, I want to come back to the Gonstead, you still had to go around and go the long way and go the diversified route first to give yourself that platform.
I don't think there's any wrong way to approach the Gonstead technique. Mainly, I think for people that don't have any chiropractic background, they weren't raised with a chiropractic family, or maybe they just didn't go to see a chiropractor growing up on a daily basis. I think it is not a dumb idea to focus on whatever technique your school, really pushes. So for some of my classmates, I know they had never gone to see a chiropractor, came to chiropractic school. And so of course, their first thing that they focused on was the diversified technique. And why wouldn't you? Just because that's what all the professors were pushing and what they were, super knowledgeable in. So no, I don't think it's a dumb idea to focus on what your school's pushing. And then from there, once you kind of have more of a base knowledge of technique and just know your body a little bit better, then start going out into, SOT, NUCA, all these other different techniques.
Yeah. like I'm over here in Barcelona, and we have it's mostly diversified, but the thing is, you'll get people that they lay the foundation with diversified, and then after they'll go into Gonstead, which for me makes more sense. Whereas having the perfect analysis, but then not having you haven't really got the hands yet when you're in the first couple of years of school. So I encourage everybody like to do the diversified stuff first, and then go into the Gonstead. And yeah, like just that starting to try and be a little bit more objective and adjust less segments, and then buying the scope. And I remember I listened to the 1505 podcast. I'm sure you're familiar with that one. I really love that podcast. If you're into Gonstead and you haven't checked that out, I highly recommend that one. And there's been some guys on there that are like, yeah, you know, like there was one day I dropped my scope and I had to send it away like to get fixed. I just felt lost in the practice, you know. And I'm listening to this thing and I'm like, oh my God, it's like I never want to be, I like Gonstead, but I never want to be like that. I never want to feel naked without my scope. And it's been maybe 3 months of using the scope, and I showed up to my shift at the clinic there the other week. And I showed up, and then I'm like, oh, I forgot my scope. I'm like, I left it at home. What am I going to do? And I felt stressed. I'm like, oh no.
Oh no. But I feel you. I just had to send my scope in like 2 weeks ago, I think. The thermocouples on the end got bent, and it just wasn't working right. So I had to get that sent in. But I do feel your pain in chiropractic school. I know a lot of my professors would make fun of us Gonstead students because they're like, oh, you don't know how to adjust without your nervous scope. And it's like, no, that's not true. I mean, obviously these past 2 weeks without it, I have not had it. So I still rely on everything. You know, I would say other chiropractors rely on x-rays, palpation, observation, you know, motion palpations. So yeah, it sucks not having it, but it's not like the end of the world either.
I sent a patient to a classmate of mine for a substitution, and he does Thompson. And this little old lady showed up, and he was like, hey, I don't have a nervoscope like Zarek does, but I can do this if it makes you feel better. And she loved it. Well, what would you say to the girls out there that they're like, oh, they're shying away from Gonstead because they think, oh, maybe I'm a bit petite? Because you are quite petite. Like, what size are you?
So I'm 5'1". I'm not very tall.
You're the perfect example to tell.
Yeah, I'm a petite Asian woman. I don't have height. I do work out quite a bit. I am more of a muscular body type, just because that's my natural build, but also because I want to take care of myself for adjusting patients. But I think it's ridiculous to shy away from something that you're curious about. I mean, you at least have to try. You're never going to grow if you just stay in this little bubble or this state of mind where you're like, that's not going to work for me. I shouldn't even attempt it. But that's just part of my upbringing too, is my parents have always pushed me and said, you're going to do everything bigger and better than your two older brothers that have both hands, and don't put up your own barriers. So for those female chiropractic students and female chiropractors that are out there practicing already, just go for it. I'm amazed by how much help I've received from other female Gonstead docs and even male docs that are like, okay, I'm going to try and help break this down for you. I know I'm like a foot taller than you, but you know, you have two hands, I have two hands, we'll figure this out. And then like you've probably seen on my Instagram, I've done a few things to help increase my height. I have a stool that goes behind my cervical chair that's about 2 to 3 inches tall, a platform. I drag that all around my room. So like the other day I had 2 male patients that were 6'5" and 6'7" back to back. And that platform went right up next to my knee chest table. It went behind my cervical chair. And I also had high heel boots on that day, which helped. But just realizing that you can do things to help increase your height or help get that adjustment and that line of drive where it needs to be. And you're still doing Gonstead.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that platform. There's a couple that lives near me that I practice with, and they like the Gonstead stuff. Johannes and Francie, shout out to Joe and Francie. And she's very petite. She's probably about your size. Okay. And he's a great big strapping German fella. So I said, I was like, hey, there's this chiropractor that's using this platform. And then I got your Instagram out and they were like, oh, that makes sense. That's perfect. So yeah, we're getting it right there. A platform.
Yeah, it's super nice, super light. My dad actually built it for me. So that's kind of the funny thing is, so my adoptive parents, my dad, he is this like 6-foot Dutchman. And so he doesn't have a height issue. He has like these giant hands. So when I first came back to practice with him after school, I was like, Dad, I'm just not getting any cervical adjustments in the cervical chair. And he's like, what do you mean? And he's like, well, where's your elbow? Where's your hand? Like, what's your line of drive? And I'm like, no, I literally can't reach. Like, I feel like I have to like jump to get up to their necks. And he's like, really? I have to build you a short person stool? I'm like, yeah.
Mm. And you touched on this a little bit, but for the people that don't know you and haven't seen your Instagram or anything like that, can you talk about the challenges that you had with your hand and talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So for those of you that don't know, I was born without my hand. It's a congenital defect. So I either punched it through the embryonic sac or I got the umbilical cord wrapped around it, had surgery soon after. And then by the time I came to America, it was all healed. So I do wear a prosthetic arm when I'm not adjusting. This is just for daily use. Use it for driving, cooking, stuff like that. And then when it's not in the prosthetic arm, let's see here. This is what I have left of my left hand, or my left arm, I should say. So it is the full length bone. It just wasn't stimulated when I was growing, so it did not grow in length. No wrist bones attached to it. So that's kind of a bonus with adjusting because I don't have to worry about any wrist bones in there kind of moving around or irritating the end. Because it's primarily been in a prosthetic device most of my life leading up to chiropractic school, it's very sensitive. So it almost has better palpation, feeling and touch than my right hand does. But honestly, I think it's a way better adjusting tool than my right hand, having a hand, be honest. It's one less joint, no wrist to worry about when I'm doing my line of drive. And it's really powerful to the point that I have to like back off sometimes because otherwise I'm going to blow someone's neck out of the water.
Wow. And obviously you grew up seeing your dad adjust, and at some point you decided you wanted to be a chiropractor, but at some point you've had to make that decision and be in your mind and say, okay, I only have one hand, but fuck it, like I'm still gonna get it done anyway, like whatever it takes.
Yeah. So like I said, I grew up in my family's chiropractic clinic here in Aiken, Minnesota, and I just had an interest in health in general. I was a dancer for many years throughout high school, fell in love with what my athletic trainer did. And at one point in time thought maybe that's kind of what I want to do. Maybe I want to be an athletic trainer someday and work with athletes, but just realized that there was also things with that profession that I couldn't quite obtain or succeed with or grow with. So Dad said, why didn't you think about sports chiropractic? And I said, I didn't know chiropractors focused in sports. So yeah, and he's like, I don't see an issue with you doing it. He's like, you've done some really simple back adjustments on me growing up, nothing crazy. And he's like, we'll make it work. So I applied for chiropractic school, put on the application in the disability section that I was born with a congenital defect or a prosthetic arm, would be happy to meet with the school prior to my acceptance. Never heard from them, so they obviously don't look at the application that thoroughly. Went to chiropractic school and everyone had a meltdown with me being there. It was kind of crazy.
I remember being a CA and going to Chiro Europe, and I was always really nervous about chiropractic college because I wouldn't be the most academic. So I was like, oh, like, am I going to be able to do this? Like, am I going to be able to go through the rigors of the course, and feeling a bit nervous about it and a little bit insecure. And there's a woman, there's actually two women in Europe that have this that I've heard of. And I'm so sorry, I can't remember her name, but this woman got on stage and she had a congenital malformation, and it was in both hands. So it's like her fingers, it's almost like she has like free stubs almost. She doesn't have properly fingers. And she got on stage and she was like, I just decided that I was going to be a chiropractor and I have to learn how to adjust in a completely different way to everybody else. And now, even though I've had different challenges, I am a good chiropractor. And I remember sitting in the audience and being like, well, shit, like I'm making these.
I have no excuses.
there's no excuse. Like literally, this woman has malformations in her hands, and she still put herself through it. So shut up and stop complaining, and go and get it done. You know.
Yeah, and I never saw myself as anyone super unique or special growing up just because of how my family raised me. They're like, you're not disabled, you don't have a handicap, we're not going to treat you like you do. So, I mean, my parents put me in piano lessons, which I'd use my prosthetic arm for. I did dance team. I mean, I did every activity underneath the sun, rode bike, went swimming. I guess when I finally decided it wasn't like, this is going to be this unique journey of a lifetime that's going to inspire people. So when I started posting adjusting videos like last year, I was just blown away because I'm like, everyone has a so-called disability to an extent. I mean, mine is I was born without a hand, I said, but there's people that I know need glasses to see, so they get glasses. I'm missing a hand, so I got a prosthetic arm. My brother has dyslexia, so he had a special tutor. I mean, it's kind of all what your perception or how you view yourself.
And then when you hear people complain about these things, you know, when you see someone that has both hands, but maybe they're a little bit petite and they're like, oh, I can't do this adjustment because the table's too high and oh, I'm not strong enough. Like, do you kind of, I would imagine you kind of roll your eyes when you see that. You're like,
well, I try not to roll my eyes, but yeah, there's that little internal voice like, what the heck are you talking about? Because you just learn to adapt. And I think chiropractors as a whole, we're pretty good about adapting in so many different aspects of practice and clinic life. But yeah, again, like back to the stool thing, that was my adaptation. Was, you know, I was too short to reach most patients in the cervical chair. And, you know, because of the Gonstead technique, I don't crack necks, you know, laying down or supines. So it was like, okay, how can I adapt? Because I'm not just going to say, oh, I can't do it. Guess I'll just throw out my whole Gonstead set.
Yeah, and then you wouldn't be able to adjust without your scope.
Yeah, I'd use this. Like Zarek.
How do you adapt? Like, can you adjust the cervicals on both sides? Like, how do you do the side posture? Can you talk a little bit about the adaptations you have to make?
Really no adaptations. I do adjust cervicals from both sides. You know, right hand, obviously that's pretty easy. And with my left arm, with my stump, what I have left, it's the same thing, because if you look on my Instagram, I did post an x-ray of my left arm and the ulna kind of curves over the radius. So I do kind of have that fine point of contact, just like our piezoform on our right wrist. And I use that. And like I said, it's really great. It's very specific. The only thing is, because it's such a short lever of an arm and muscle, I have to be very careful that I don't use too much power. And that goes the same for side posture. We see a lot of L5 subluxations here at our clinic. And again, I just find whatever side that L5 needs to.
Snow.
Yeah, it's so true. It's so true. Where we are at in the world in Aiken, Minnesota, this is a huge community for hunting and fishing. And so if it isn't because someone fell on the ice shoveling or ice fishing in the winter, then in the summer or the fall, it's because they were out hunting and fell out of their deer stand. I mean, it's one or the other, but there's a lot of falls here because it's slippery, it's, you know, icy, it's wet from snow. So yeah, we see a lot of L5s, a lot of sacrum issues too, a lot of broken tailbones because people have fallen on the ice.
And whenever people do come to the office, what's like a typical response whenever you tell them? Do they say
tell them about my arm or? Yeah. So for the most part, Aiken is a really small community. It's about 2,000 people. It's primarily a retirement community. And like my graduating class was 84 kids. So everyone knows everyone. But yeah, I do get a few new patients here and there that don't know who I am, don't know who dad is. And so they'll come into the room and I'll start doing their intake form and start going over history and range of motion stuff. And you can just like see like their eyes like kind of like elevate or eye you like in between my eyes and like down by the clipboard where I'm holding it with my left arm. And you can just kind of like see the sheer panic hit them. And usually for the most part, they're pretty good. And they'll just be like, can I ask like what happened to your arm? And I'll start talking to them and then you can just see them relax again. But there's definitely that moment they're just like, what the heck did I get myself into?
Yeah.
So yeah, on Instagram, I heavily talk about missing a left hand and practicing, but the marketing that I do around here in Aiken, I don't really push that. I don't want to come off as like this kind of circus freak that people want to come see and not actually seek care for. I did have a few doctors that I interned for in chiropractic school that were like, yeah, you should really market yourself as this one-armed chiropractor and da da da. But I'm like, but that's not the only aspect of me. I'm
Yeah,
Dr. Jenna first and foremost.
yeah.
And that's
Don't set it as your Instagram name. You know, one-handed chiropractor.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, it's a huge aspect of who I am, but it's not my main selling point. You know, I still consider myself a Gonstead chiropractor first and foremost. So
Yeah, I always think it's weird when you see people they'll put on Instagram, they always want to put, like, if people put vegan in their username, nothing wrong with veganism, but when they're like vegan chiropractor, vegan bodybuilder, I'm like, what does that's just like a lifestyle choice that you make, like it's not your
yeah,
I
yeah.
think there's something weird about that.
Well, and to me, that's like such a small detail of something you choose to do on a daily basis. Like, I guess I agree with you. It's like, why did you need to put that in your Instagram name or handle, whatever you call it?
Yeah. Two of the main influences whenever I was exploring chiropractic in my home country, Northern Ireland, were Joanne Wilson and Marie McElhinney, who are two chiropractors that they're both quite petite women as well. Mm-hmm. Now in Ireland, we have such a big farming community. So there's a lot of big, like, strong farmers, and also Northern Ireland's had a lot of conflict over the decades. So there's a lot of like generational trauma there. So it's like really hard, like really tough men, like really tough spines.
Okay.
What they've found is, like, people will come in and they kind of go in expecting someone like my kind of size to be there, and it's a woman, and sometimes they do get asked, they're like, you know, are you going to be able to adjust me?
Oh, I hate that.
And they always just kind of laugh, and they're like, all right, like, get on the table and let's see. And then they move that bone perfectly, you know.
Yeah, no, I definitely received that here at the clinic, and that was one of the reasons why I had posted my first adjusting video, because I was getting so frustrated with people just judging me and discriminating towards me. And I had made that video to send to some of my mentors to just see, like, am I setting everything up right? Does it look like I'm adjusting correctly? Is my line of drive correct? But yeah, I was kind of shocked by the amount of women and men that would come in to see me. And obviously we're used to Dad because he's been practicing here for 30 plus years. And they just kind of look at me and they're just like, I don't think you're going to be able to get the adjustment today. So, you know, I would just try and be as polite as possible, but then my true personality came out later on. I'm very blunt, very straightforward. I don't have a whole lot of time for BS. So now when I get a lot of the big dudes that come in and they start making those comments, I'm like, I'm not here to beg you to be my patient. So if you want to be adjusted today or not, there's my room. Otherwise, you'll have to see Dad, and he's booked for like the next 3 days. So it's up to you. I said, I will move it. I guarantee I'll move the bone. But yeah, I guess it's all depends on you. I'm not here to beg you to be my patient. So
yeah.
And they're just kind of like, okay, I guess I'll do this.
The certainty, they can feel the certainty from you.
Yeah. And I think that's another important thing too, is setting the tone right off the bat with a lot of my patients. The other thing I was really shocked by was how many patients want to be coddled. Like, they want to come in, they want you to adjust them. They want that one adjustment to fix, you know, their chronic issue in one go. And they want to go home and not change any of their bad habits. And when it doesn't get better, they want to come back and yell at you. And so right off the bat, I established that right away, that I'm like, this is a 2-person team. We're going to get through this chronic issue or acute issue together, but I can't do all the work. If you're not willing to put the work in and, you know, sit at home and ice or go for a walk after this adjustment, I said, there's really no point of trying this. And that helps immensely, because there's a lot of patients that are like, well, I just want you to make me better. And it's like, yeah, I'm only like 80% of the, you know, the answer, depending on.
Yeah, and I've found, I mean, I have very limited clinical experience, because I'm coming to the end of my 5th year, so that's 2 years of student clinic. Yay. Which is the same. But I do find that you do need to have that certainty. I see it with other people like on that are in clinic at the moment, if you don't have that certainty where it's like, hey, we are a team, I'm going to try and facilitate your healing as best I can, but you need to go and do your stuff as well. And there
Yeah.
are some personalities where the patient might come in, and it's men and women are guilty of it. And the patient will come in and say, you know, I want you to fix this and this, or even worse, like, I want you to adjust here, like this is where I need it. And they're just like, yeah, okay, yeah, that's what I'll do, you know. And they're a bit more passive. Oh yeah, you come in like whenever you want. Like, no, they need someone who's going to say, you need to follow this care plan if you are expected to get results.
Yeah. Yep. And I try to just be super thorough and super to the point right away. Because, yeah, for the most part, we're not the type of clinic that signs patients up. Like, we're not like, okay, drop $800 on a care package and we want you to come in, you know, 2 times a week. I'm very upfront that I'm like, my main goal is not to see you. And they kind of look at me and I'm like, yes, we will adjust you through, you know, the period of time that we think that you need care. That might be one adjustment, that might be, you know, 5 spread out over a month. But after a certain point, I want to see you for maintenance care. So I don't want to see you on a regular basis because you've got bigger and better things to do outside of this clinic than be here with me 24/7. If you're here with me 24/7, we're doing something wrong. And they just really appreciate that honesty because, one, you know, I'm trying to save the money. But two, it's like, go live your life. I don't want to see you, not because I don't like you, but come on, you don't want to be here.
Yeah, I think Tim Young, he calls them retainer visits, because like, we've done the job, and now it's just like, if you had the braces and you have to wear the retainers, like, this is the same as your retainer visits to keep your spine sitting the way we want it.
Nope, that's exact. I agree completely with that.
And I think like your message, what you're saying and what you're putting out there, is going to help a lot of people, because you've kind of had 2 of the challenges, because you are petite and you have this hand. There's girls that are kind of struggling that they are petite, or men as well. I'm sure men are small. And they're struggling because they're petite. So I think like putting this out there and them seeing you to overcome the challenges that you have, I think it'll give them a little bit more bravery to say like, okay, I am small. I might have to adapt the technique. I might have to work that little bit harder. Kind of like what I was saying to someone the other day. There's a guy, he's in 2nd year and he's kind of struggling with the exams, and I understand completely. I found the technique stuff a little bit easier to grasp. It kind of came to me a bit quicker, but passing the exams and going through the academics, and I just explained to this guy, I was like, look, you're probably going to have to work 5 times harder than everybody else. Someone can just go to the class and they can absorb it and they know it for life. You're going to have to do it over and over and over and over.
Yeah.
But as long as you get to the end and you get the bit of paper, as long, okay, if someone's petite, you may have to train that little bit harder. You're going to have to do some mock thrusts on a dummy. You're going to have to make more groups, you know, to practice in. You're going to have to do more setups, but you will eventually get there. It's not the setback or the death sentence that you think it is, you know?
No, and yeah, and I understand from the academic point of that. I understand from the adapting portion of that. Just because academia was not easy for me. I had to retake multiple of my board exams. I was dismissed twice from the school because of academic reasons, because I had a very toxic relationship when I started chiropractic school. So yeah, it was one of those things that I knew from the get-go that I was going to be that person that had to spend an additional 2 hours in the library studying every night compared to my classmates. And that's the same for, you know, specifically the female chiro students, that if you're struggling, you guys got to put the extra time in. And it's not always just going to your methods or adjusting room and, you know, practicing on someone or the dummy over and over, but also finding a good mentor. I was actually shocked because I had in my mind, I'm like, okay, I need to find another small female Gonstead chiro, and that's going to be my fail-safe, and she's going to be my mentor for the rest of my life. But I actually have quite a few large male Gonstead mentors that have really helped me also. So, you know, don't limit yourself. Realize that there's really a lesson to learn in any situation, and meeting people too. So don't close yourself off to opportunities for learning.
Yeah, and that, I guess that relates to the technique as well. Like whenever I was doing MLS and going to the MLS seminars a lot, it's kind of 50-50, like men and women doing that. Now I'm doing a seminar. It's not Gonstead, but there's a lot of Gonstead stuff in it. It's kind of like a Palmer package sort of thing, but there's a lot of seated cervical and Gonstead analysis in it. And it's 9 guys and 1 girl. And I kind of think that's a shame. And that's why I want to put this out there as well. And like, just say to women, like, it's okay, like, come and do it. You might have to adapt it a little bit, but it's fine. But I really think that's a shame that they are outnumbered in Gonstead. And it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I mean, I would say it was a pretty even split of members in the Gonstead Club when I was attending school, when we'd go to seminars at Mount Horeb. But yeah, a lot of times out at the seminar, you know, the meeting, no, what seminar was that? Oh, Knee Chest Extravaganza. The last few years I've gone out, that there is heavily more of a male presence than there is a female presence, but I think that is changing. And I do think it's important just to keep being, you know, upfront about it. You know, that's why I like to post as much as I do on Instagram about it, because females need to realize that, yeah, it's not as hard a technique as you think it is. Yes, it's time consuming. Yes, you need to do the work, but you know, how many other things in life have you overcome? You know, it's just one more obstacle. And even at that, don't look at it as an obstacle if you're curious and you're passionate about it.
Yeah, I've even had patients before, like if I say, oh, I'm going to refer you, if I need to do a transfer or something or a substitution, I'm going to refer you to her. And you will have patients be like, oh, do you think she's going to adjust me? And I explained to them, I'm like, look, whenever I was, how old was I? 19. I had my first adjustment, and it was from a female chiropractor that I then started working for as her
really?
As her CA. And I said, like, she was pretty petite, and that's one of the best adjustments I've ever had in my life. It was a C2 on the right, and she moved that bone, and I knew in that moment that I was going to be a chiropractor.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah, no, and that's a comparison a lot of times that Dad and I get when we see each other's patients is, oh, that was really light. And I said, yeah, adjustments don't always have to be super hard. I know that's more of Dad's style. He puts a lot of power behind his adjustments, but I said, you know, an adjustment doesn't have to be hard as long as you have that correct line of drive. You shouldn't be using all this force where, you know, you're practically ripping your bicep muscle off and injuring yourself and the patient. And I think that's something really hard to get through a lot of people's heads, is it's not always about, you know, the muscle, the power, it's the line of drive. It amazes me how many like mid-back adjustments I go and I set up to push, you know, a segment in like T6 into their mid-back, and I barely lean on it and it goes. It just goes.
The right place. It's the right.
Yeah. It goes to show how badly the bone wants to go into place with the correct line of drive, and you don't need to sit and jump on the patient or wail on them. Because, and a lot of patients here, like I said, it's a retirement community. So we do see a pretty good population of people that I would say are 60 and over. So you want to obviously be mindful of, you know, osteoporosis and possibly cracking ribs and things like that. You don't need a lot of force for them.
Yeah, it's a technique. It really humbled me, I think, because towards the end of last year, I was getting to a point just doing diversified and decent at it. But I kind of thought like, okay, I've got this, you know. But since going into the Gonstead stuff, I'm like, oh wow, like there's a whole other layer to this, and every day it humbles me with the analysis, with the setups, with the technique, with how little you have to do to get those massive changes. And that's why I love it. I can't wait for the next 5 years of just getting like deeper and deeper into it.
Yeah, hopefully you'll make it over here, and you'll be able to go to the Gonstead Clinic in Mount Horeb, Wisconsin at some point.
I'd love to go there. You've trained there? You did seminars or something there?
Yep, I've been going there. So my first Gonstead seminar there was with Dad, and it was actually right before I started chiropractic school back in 2012. So I don't even know if I technically should have been there, but I just was so curious about it, and I wanted to kind of see it before I started chiropractic school. So I've been there a handful of times. The last time I was there was this past October to drop Dad off there for Meeting of the Minds. And I just, especially with Knee Chest Extravaganza in the spring, that's probably when there's the most people there. And it is such a just raw, like fiery, like energy throughout the entire place. It's so neat. It's so neat to talk to so many people and network with docs all over the world. I mean, it's not just people in the United States. A lot of times there's docs that come over from Asia. So I hope you get the opportunity at some point, because it's kind of life changing. It really is. It's neat to see where it all started.
Yeah, I'd really love to go over there because it's so hard to get access to over here in Europe. You guys kind of you have a lot of the Gonstead seminars.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I wanted to go to Herb Wood was going to come over to Valencia and do like I think it was maybe once a month he was going to come and teach some stuff, and I was going to sign up to that, but because of the situation, that's not happening anymore. So we kind of have to figure it out for ourselves.
Yeah, that makes it hard. And I was shocked when you said that there isn't, such a strong Gonstead presence over in Barcelona or Europe in general. Did you say?
Yeah, very hard to find them. There are a few.
Okay.
Depending on the country, there's some places that have a little bit more of a problem with the x-rays and stuff. There's some countries where we're not allowed to send for x-rays. In Europe, it really depends. So in Barcelona,
Really?
you can send for them, no problem.
Okay.
In Germany, you're not even allowed to refer. You're not even allowed to send them for x-rays. So they're doing Gonstead as close as they can get to it, but they're actually not allowed to send for x-rays. And then there's other countries like in Northern Ireland, if you have the qualification, you can buy an x-ray unit and just get to work.
That's crazy. Oh my goodness. I can't imagine not being able to get x-rays or take x-rays.
Yeah, so over here it's a little bit more of a challenge for them. But the community, we're getting the community growing a little bit.
Okay, good. And it'll keep growing. It will. It'll just take some time, I'm sure.
Yeah, I had looked at it. I'd been adjusted Gonstead style, and I remember liking it, but I just wanted to focus on the diversified until I got that down. And then the humbling experience that I had was there was a guy that came in. It was a transfer from another intern because this guy was kind of complaining, and he just said that this person's not getting the job done basically. And it got transferred to me. And the problem was I was in my ego. So I was like, oh yeah, like they're going to transfer it to me. Like, that's all right. Like now he's going to get a real adjustment, And this guy, like I can laugh about it now, but it's not funny. Like this guy, I didn't hurt him, but I way overstimulated him.
Oh, okay.
This guy is gonna get adjusted. And it was like pelvis, lumbar,
yep, you cross too many wires, too much sympathetic and parasympathetic.
Shoulder, elbow, wrist, hip.
Yeah.
He levitated off that table, and I was like, you need to come twice a week for 6 weeks. He's like, yes. And he booked all the appointments there and then. And then the next appointment, he never showed up. And I was like, oh, that's weird, but just I'm sure he'll come for the next one. The next one, he didn't show up. So I said to the CAs, I was like, call that guy and find out what happened to him. And then I got took to the supervisor room, and it's like, oh, he said, what did you do to that guy? Like he said that he couldn't sleep that night. Like he was in so much pain during the night. And that was the humbling moment for me, because I had been arrogant about my technique and I had way overstimulated him. And I was like, okay, I did that guy a disservice by over adjusting him, and that will never happen again. And that week I started shadowing more objective chiropractors. I started doing x-ray line drawing. I ordered the scope. I put a ban on myself. I said, I'm not going to adjust any more than 3 segments a visit for at least 6 weeks. So now I have, maybe 4 or 5 that I could adjust, but I have to do that analysis and see which one's going to be the priority. And I just, to humble myself, I started doing that. And the strangest thing was I started adjusting less segments. My results curve shot up, and I'm still a beginner. Like I'm a baby in this. I don't know anything. But what used to take 10 visits to clear up was now taking 2, and that's when I was like, oh, like there is really something to this. And ever since, yes, exactly. And ever since then, I've been going deeper and deeper into it, and I love it. But it took for that experience to give me the slap in the face, and then I started being more objective.
Yeah, and it's crazy. It's so easy to over adjust, and for those of you that are going to watch this, don't shoot yourself in the foot. It's all part of learning. I'm still learning. I'm Dad said to me, he's like, it takes 5 years for you to become a good chiropractor, to really, be able to be in touch with the patient, know their breathing, know what's going on with their body, know what to adjust and in what order. But yeah, the other day I had a mom bring her son in. I'd say he's maybe about 6 years old. And he is having issues bedwetting. He was having sinus issues. I mean, she was taking him to an EENT doctor and a peds doctor and all these different doctors trying to, clear up the sinus issue, trying to clear up the bedwetting. And, sitting down, I scoped him, I checked everything out, and it would have been really easy for me to just blast him away. Let's do a sacrum adjustment. Let's do some low back, some mid back, some upper back, neck. But it is hard sometimes. You just want them to improve so quickly and just be out of that discomfort and pain. But yeah, that first time I'm like, okay, I'm just going to touch his sacrum. I'm not going to touch anything else. I want to touch his neck really bad, but I'm not going to. And I adjusted his sacrum. It clunked right in. He went away, came back next week at the same time, and his results were crazy. I did do a neck adjustment the next time. And then after that, I think I did sacrum once more. And now he's just like, I don't need to see you, Dr. Jenna, I'm fine. So you'll learn, you'll figure it out. There's some patients too that with the Gonstead technique, we see the pelvis as the base and you want to go work base up. But I had a patient the other day that wasn't getting better with that approach. So I said, okay, today I'm going to try adjusting your neck first and just see. And I did, and she improved. And I haven't had to, do the opposite direction now for a while, but it's a lot of learning and it's a lot of experimenting in some ways. But yeah, don't rush the process. There's time for growth.
Yeah. What will cause you to make that distinction between I'm going to start from the bottom up or start at the neck first?
Actually, Dad said it to me because I had been talking to him about this patient, how she just wasn't really improving. We had taken x-rays, looked over her x-rays multiple times and it just wasn't getting better. And he said, listen to the Gonstead technique. You find it, fix it, accept it where you find it, fix it, and then leave it alone. And he said, try her neck today and just see what happens. And I said, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, just try it. And so I did. And I had her call me back the next day and I asked her, okay, how are the headaches? How is the upset stomach? And they were all gone. And I said to Dad, I said, how'd you even know to do that? And he's like, there's always going to be those exceptions. And he's like, that's what I learned from my mentor, Alex Cox from the Gonstead Clinic. There's going to be times that you have to kind of bend the rules and try something different because not everyone's going to be that cookie cutter patient. They're not all going to be, pelvis, mid back, neck, and you can't always do it in the same order.
Yeah. That was another big shift in my mind as well, is because you always kind of think maybe there's like an element of insecurity to it, but I'm like, oh, I have to adjust each segment so that the patient feels like they got something. But a big shift in my mind is when you start using the scope and realizing that the patients are actually delighted when they don't need to get adjusted. So you'll scope someone in motion palpating and you'll be like, hey man, like, we've adjusted your neck the last 3 times that you were here, and today you're actually clear. I'm not going to touch your neck. And they're like, oh, cool. Yeah. And they're happy. Like they're like, oh, you mean I don't need it? That's great. Whereas that was a big shift in my mind, because maybe before I was like, oh, I have to do something so that it justifies the fee,
No, a lot of times they, patients just want to hear good news. And one of my other patients kind of compared us to dentists the other day, because she's like, well, I do an annual checkup at the dentist, but I don't always have stuff done. So she's like, I don't have an issue coming here and paying, your price for you to check me over. And yeah, sometimes you won't adjust anything. And sometimes maybe you'll only adjust like a wrist and I'm on my way. So yeah, a lot of patients don't have an issue with it. And oftentimes it does help to compare something like the dentist situation to them, just to kind of show them it's like no different from going to a MD for something. Finding out there's nothing wrong and then going on your merry way.
Yeah, great stuff. Well, thank you so much for coming and sharing. This was great, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. Where can people reach you?
So I am on Instagram at Jenna Kuiken, JENNA KUIKEN. Otherwise, I do have a personal email that I am willing to share if you guys ever want to reach out to me. Again, that's Jenna Kuiken, dc@gmail.com. I'm always open for questions, especially with chiropractic students if you guys are struggling with something. Not that I've overcome it any better than anyone else, but sometimes you just need a vent. So I'm always here for you guys.
Yeah, sometimes you just need that kick up the ass to stop making excuses, I find. All right, we'll wrap it up at that. Thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, of course.
All right, speak soon.
Sounds good.